Hello, hello, good morning, good evening, good night, wherever you are in the world. I'm so excited to be here to continue the Omer conversations. This is the second night of the Omer conversations, and we had a beautiful kickoff last night talking about Chesed with Gabrielle Bernstein, which was such a loving conversation. And tonight I'm going to be joined by another dear friend, Robyn Youkilis, who will be talking with me about Gevurah. So just before I introduce Robyn to you all, I'm going to do a little recap on what the Omer is and talk about the idea of Gevurah and how we see it in our lives. What's really cool about each of these sefirot is that we can begin to look at them as frameworks that pop up in our everyday experiences, our everyday relationships, our everyday conversations, and just being attuned to them, just beginning to notice them, the healing work of working within each of these attributes will begin. So you may have heard it before. We're currently in the period of the Omer, which is a 49-day stretch, which spans from the beginning of Passover until Shavuot, when the Jewish people receive the Torah. And those 49 days, those 7 weeks, are broken into 7 different weeks, and within each of those weeks we investigate and explore the energy of a particular sephira. So the sefirot are these divine emotional attributes, and we can use them as lenses through which to look at our lives and our experiences. And as we explore each one of these sefirot, we begin to have this time of personal introspection, and it can lead us to a lot of healing, a lot of growth, a lot of insight. And as we go through that process, in a way we're mirroring the experience of the Israelites as they left Egypt, and they had to change from the mentality of slavery into this mentality of a free people who were clear channels, open and ready to receive a download of holy wisdom with the giving of the Torah. So we're kind of emulating that journey today. We're going through it with them on an energetic level. And tonight I'm going to be talking about Gevurah with Robyn. Gevurah is the second of the sefirot, the second of the emotional attributes that we study in this period. And it's usually translated as strength or discipline. Gevurah is how we create structure in our lives. It's the boundaries. It's where we draw lines and have timelines and frameworks and create control. But I like to look at Gevurah through a metaphor, because I feel like in this way we really can get to the heart of it more deeply. So I like to say, if love is like water, the flow of water, then Gevurah is the riverbank. Gevurah are those lanes that direct the water's flow and the speed and the intensity and the way the water channels down that stream, the way it's distributed. So that's Gevurah, the banks. Or if you think about light and a prism, when a stream of light hits a prism and refracts into a rainbow, that prism that's giving a container to the light, which you otherwise wouldn't see, that white light, is Gevurah. And because Robyn is our guest today, I have to give the metaphor of a recipe. If we wanted to bake challah and we threw all of our ingredients into a bowl, just as we liked, toss them in as much as you want, we probably wouldn't end up with a really tasty challah. So Gevurah is our recipe. Gevurah is the container. It's the measurements. It's the refining of that stream of chesed, the stream of ingredients, the stream of water, the stream of light. So this is our container in life, how we create containers. And Gevurah, like anything else, can be healthy and it can be unhealthy depending on our relationship with it. So this week we begin to ask ourselves questions such as, how do we relate to discipline? Do we rely on discipline to feel safe? Are we someone who thrives on structure, but then realize we actually really need that structure because the ambiguity of not having everything in place and in order is just too scary for us? Or do we live on the other end of the spectrum? Are we someone who's more organic and we like flow and we resist discipline and we resist that idea of being obligated to a schedule or a time? Do we need more self-regulation and more accountability? We can look at discipline as boundaries that we create in our lives. Do we give ourselves permission to say no when we need to? That's a loving form of discipline, a self-love form of discipline. So we each need Gevurah in our lives, and societies need Gevurah. On a communal level, we can look at the structures and the frameworks which guide our communities and our societies and our countries, and we can ask whether the boundaries that we've created and the systems that we have in place are healthy, and we can investigate them and explore them. And even in Judaism, our whole calendar is Gevurah because we have this divine wisdom and divine light and divine blessing coming to us. And the container for it is the rhythm of our year. It's the Chagim, it's Shabbat, it's the weekly structure, it's the daily structure, even the hourly structure. So we inject spirit into the world, and our practices are the container for how we express that spirit, and that is Gevurah. So we know where we're going and we know how to stay together, and we know what unites us is that rhythm of practice. So now, I noticed Robyn came on before, and I would love, Robyn, if you can request to join me again, I can bring you on. But in the meantime, I'm going to tell you a little about this incredible, joyful woman who's coming to speak with me today. Robyn is a board-certified health coach, a wellness expert, a business owner. I actually have to read this because I have to remember all the things she does. She's an entrepreneur, she's a mama, she's a multiple hat wearer, I can assure you of that, and the author of 2 best-selling books, Go With Your Gut and Thin From Within, they're not only books, but they're also incredible recipe volumes. And she's the leading authority on gut health and gut intuition, and she's appeared on The View, The Today Show, E-News, The Wall Street Journal Live, and many other places, which we have probably all watched. Robyn leads with authenticity, I can vouch for that, honesty and chutzpah, but she's always teaching from a place of love. Okay, I've got to scroll to the top of my comments. Here we are. Robyn, right now, I'm so excited. Hello, my love.
I got it.
I hope you heard all of that, your little bio, which you all know, but I'm glad that I could share that beautiful capsule and snapshot of what you do with everyone here. Thank you for joining so early where you are.
Thank you for having me so late where you are. So, no, this is really nice. I had the opportunity to join yesterday, and I had this moment with you and Gabrielle, and I had this moment where I was like, oh, I need to go do this, I need to go do that. And I was like, no, I need to just be here and learn and take in, because I feel like this year we've been almost starved for that, right? We've had to seek it out in newer ways, and also meet it with wherever we're at that day. And so it was just so nice to sit and learn and take some notes. And so I'm really happy that today is my opportunity. And I always think it's interesting what my friends and colleagues, when you're both, think that I'm strong in, because I'm always like, oh, interesting. Okay, cool. Yeah, I guess I can see that. So.
Through a different lens based on how we see you in that moment. And that's actually a beautiful segue, because I wanted to explain why I chose you to discuss this characteristic, this emotional attribute. And I chose Robyn, not because she is the stereotype of Gevurah, because when we hear of Gevurah, we think strength, discipline, rigidity, because in this moment of even seeing you on the screen, you can see that you are just this free spirit, full of vibrant energy, eclectic, whimsical, so passionate. And yet the idea that Gevurah plays on another level in your life is what makes it really interesting, because I think it's something that you dance with and that we can all learn from how you're utilizing this structure and discipline, and yet still managing to spread your wings and go to concerts around the country and baby moons and everything else, and live with that spontaneity. So, you know, we see it in the idea, the fact that you've written these recipe books, you know, these cookbooks, and they're not even cookbooks, they're really wellness books, but and they have so much nutritional information. I mean, Gevurah is underlying all of that structure of creating frameworks for diet, and in your career and the way you coach people and the encouragement you give to create structures that create healthy lifestyles. And then the way you've drawn back required so much discipline and boundary creating this past year. And then, I mean, you even just sent an email like right now before I got on the chat about your skincare routine. So I'm like, there's another thing that you don't even realize, you know, that this Gevurah is a part of many of your daily routines and rhythms. And then, of course, as a mother, and I feel like we could just sit here and talk for half an hour about Gevurah at bedtime, which is what I just struggled with for the last few hours.
Oh,
And I know that that's something you're exploring as you mother your beautiful 5-year-old daughter and soon to be whatever. Soon to
yes,
be.
for those of you who don't know, I am 34 weeks pregnant, so I have about 5.5 weeks to go before, God willing, new baby is here.
Not during this conversation.
Yeah, no, not during this time, but it might be sooner than 5.5 weeks, everybody. So,
Amazing. So that is why I thought you would be just the perfect person to consider this with and dive into it with. So I wanted to ask, you know, during the pandemic, it's interesting that you said you needed to sit down and watch us yesterday, because I feel during the pandemic, I really saw you step up as a leading voice in meditation, and you brought that to us. So with so much consistency and so much compassion and devotion, and then recently you were saying something about having not kept up with that practice as consistently as you previously had, and then when you sort of dropped back into it, you immediately changed, and Navy noticed a change. And I wanted to know, what is that practice exactly, and how difficult is it for you to commit to it? As someone, I find it difficult to commit to practices long term, and what changes for you when you do get into that rhythm?
yeah, so we talk a lot about morning routines and wellness and how they're the foundation for our day, right? It's very under this theme. But you know, in my motherhood life, it's very routines are very inconsistent. Sometimes my daughter's in my bed and I slept or I didn't sleep, or my husband wakes up in a funky mood, and or I wake up in a funky mood, and it's just it feels everything can feel scattery. And so what shifted for me a lot this year, well, first off, in leading the meditations at the beginning of the pandemic, for whatever reason, thank you, Hashem, thank you, self, thank you, intuition, I just was very grounded in it. I'm very good in a crisis. I always have been. You know, at a young age, my father passed away from cancer when I was 17. And I just was kind of the one in the family that just, I don't know, I'm like, I've got my feet underneath me, not always. And it wasn't in an unhealthy, imbalanced way. It just what was natural for me. And so I feel like there was a similar energy when the pandemic began. I was like, this is what I'm supposed to do. It felt clear for me to be able to bring it through. And what a gift, right? How often in our lives do we have such crystal clear clarity about a way that we're supposed to show up and serve, and we're actually able to meet it from 0 to 10 without our stuff getting in the way or our life.
Right. We needed you. We needed you to be showing up in that way at that time.
I just was able, it just came through, and I'm grateful for it. And then also one thing that I teach in my work a lot is when we do walk away from some of these practices. I know in my lifetime of wellness, the last 12 years that I've been working in this industry, there isn't a single practice that I've done that I haven't walked away or veered away or closed the door on at some point. And right, like everything, even drinking water, even getting fresh air. I mean, the most basic things. At some point, I've been like, no. And I think part of that is to see where, as you said earlier, where your banks are, right? Until you kind of like, you can float along and then you bang into another one and you're like, oh, that didn't feel really good. I need to get back to that. And
Yeah.
so a lot of what I teach too is not even getting back to something, but what's my new version of this? And relating the meditations to now, to answer your question about these practices that serve me, something shifted in the last couple of months where I realized that these aren't so much, it's not, I used to call meditation or working out a non-negotiable.
Mm.
And I changed that in the last few months. The word that came through was anchor.
Yeah.
All of a sudden, I'm like, anchor to me, like anchor feels like centuries old wisdom, like something that is a force greater than you. It isn't something you're trying to do. It's as real as the earth and stone. Like you can go digging in your backyard for 10 minutes until you hit something. Like how long has that rock been there?
Right. Oh,
And that word anchor helped me realize like, okay, my meditation practice is an anchor. And I also can let it mean very different things every single day.
yes.
And a little lesson in this is I could hold myself back saying, oh, well, I'm not a perfect meditator. I don't meditate every day. I don't have a consistent practice. Or I can say, hey, I'm still showing up as a meditation guide and leader in this space. And I'm also saying, some days I do, some days I don't. Some days it's 3 deep breaths. Some days it's 2 minutes before bed. Some days I say, screw it. Some weeks, like this is a week where I'm having a very hard time settling myself in a traditional meditation. And I could beat myself up about it, or I can say, you know what, this is where I'm at right now. And
Mm.
it's okay. And what else is here for me? Maybe I just need to be walking and breathing, or I need to be connecting more. It's not about me connecting with myself. I need a
Yeah.
moment to like really be with my community. And so coming back to this idea of Gevurah, I think my strength lies less in finding the discipline or finding the banks and more in my belief in my own intuition and my messages from myself that can guide me of where I need to go within that structure, within that discipline, and when I need to like lean in and when I need to lean out.
That's incredible. So, incredible advice, because I feel like you've just given us all permission not to be slaves to the discipline or slaves to the practice. And this metaphor that you brought up of the anchor is so beautiful, because when it's embedded there, it never goes away. So you've got the thread and you can move wherever you want to, but you can always find your way back to that focal point. And you always have those, that like toolbox of practices, but really the anchor is how they make you feel. That's the intuition you're talking about. So
Yeah.
what gives you that feeling of groundedness might change from week to week, year to year, life stage to life stage. But your commitment is to the feeling.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So beautiful, Robyn. So beautiful. See, like it's amazing to like have these deep explorations as friends and then talk about these concepts and look at them through these glasses. So,
Mm-hmm.
so I think, well, I was going to ask how we can be disciplined without being too hard on ourselves.
Mm.
But that's kind of what you answered. But is there anything else that you would want to speak about?
I really do think, yeah, and I'm actually glad that you're stating it again because I want to really bring this point home of we do need to give ourselves more permission to be where we're at in acceptance. It's okay. Like I'm constantly saying in my programs or whenever I'm coaching, like it's okay. Like if you're feeling frazzled right now or you can't settle or you're having thinky thoughts, it's okay. It's where
Mm,
your heart is at, your connection to your heart, your intention, your intuition. Um, we can have 5,000 moments in a day that could potentially make us feel bad about ourselves if we let them.
yeah,
And
yeah.
what I hope in my work and in my community and here is to give you the permission you need for whatever it is that you need. And that's not to say that discipline doesn't rule sometimes too. Like sometimes that is exactly what you need. My husband was having a really hard time getting himself into a movement routine again. And so he's using this app. He has this like virtual trainer and he's showing up and he's doing it. every single day. And like, that was the discipline that he needed. That was the structure he needed. And sometimes it's permission to say the opposite. Like, I've had that, and now it's a time for me to have extreme grace. And so
Right.
really it's just a little bit of like extra love of recognizing we're all working on things, and, it's okay. As Elaine, she's here, she said, yes, we are okay. And the second that we can give ourselves that permission to feel like it's okay, we all of a sudden can breathe more deeply. And likely you've given yourself more space to do the thing or whatever it is that you needed to do in the first place. But it
Right.
doesn't feel like this as much anymore. You're able
Right.
to breathe here and then say, okay, I've got this. Maybe today isn't going the way that I'd hoped it would. What do I need right now in this moment? And it's like, it's training for constantly checking in with yourself, because no one else is going to, right? We have amazing friends that could say, how are you doing? But like, it's really you checking in with yourself constantly and seeing
Right.
where you're at and where you need to go.
Absolutely. And it's this idea of showing up with strength and structure, but being expansive rather than clenched. Uh, and then I think, as you're saying that, this idea of Gevurah as being a container as opposed to discipline, a container can take many different shapes,
Mm-hmm.
different shapes. It gives you support as well as providing an outline.
Exactly.
Yeah, yeah. So are there any other routines that you are committed to right now, like in your daily life, apart from your beautiful skin routine?
Well, I'm drinking cacao, so that's definitely one. You guys can see I have a little.
The mug is
little
too.
Oh, I just
Oh,
spilled it on my. It's perfect. It's great. It's fine. It's just. Oh, actually, look, I have a towel here. That is so me, everybody. Just so you know, if you're like, oh, look at her, she's in the kitchen, she's like doing all these things. No, it's a huge mess. I've dropped my good kitchen knives on the floor so many times. I spill cacao. This is what happens. So a few routines that are serving me right now. In the beginning of the pandemic, I'd gone to Guatemala co-led a business spiritual retreat with my dear friend and colleague Jessica, and they drink cacao is a very traditional drink there. And one of the women that she was friends with sent me some, and I was like, "What is this? I like my matcha. I sometimes want my coffee." And I started drinking it at the beginning of the pandemic, and I realized like this was exactly what I needed, because it's very grounding. It can be whatever it's almost like an adaptogen without being like a fancy adaptogen. It meets you where you're at. And in traditional cacao drinking circles or ceremonies, you set an intention over your beverage. I actually don't even do that. See, I give myself permission for it to be what I need it to be. um, but some people do that and they find it supportive. I just felt like caffeine at the time with everything going on was too much for my nervous system, and I still wanted something. And so I drink cacao a lot. I find it just really grounds me. And I really love also that it feel like it connects me to the earth. It feels
yes,
very rooted, very primal, very ancient. And I feel like it's a beautiful, when I forget that I'm part of nature and part of something much bigger than myself. And I don't mean people or the universe. I literally mean like the trees and the soil and the leaves.
yes.
I feel like cacao connects me to that. So my cacao most mornings is amazing for me. Again, my meditation practice, but really letting that be whatever it is. I use the word meditation, so it translates to the masses, excuse me, but what I really like to call it is more of a mindful moment. So it's a mindful moment. It's just when you take a moment, you're like, hi, I'm me. Can I get my feet under me? Can I just be present with myself, even just for like feeling that, even in just for a few seconds right now? Like, can I take a deep breath? Can I maybe feel my heartbeat for a moment? And look, just with like a few seconds, you just brings you right down without having to do a thing or listen to a podcast or, you know, all these like wellness task boxes that we like to check. So my mindful moments for sure, I would say. And then, yeah, being in the kitchen still, eating fermented foods, nourishing my gut. Um, you know, it's funny that I've written cookbooks because I almost never use recipes, um, because I have a framework. It's like, okay, what vegetable am I doing? What protein? What healthy this? And I just kind of let it be really simple, but I let
Right.
it be something that grounds me and anchors me. Um, and then again, I'm adding fermented food. So if you're unfamiliar, like raw fermented sauerkraut or probiotic rich vegetables that help add probiotics to your digestive system. Because when we are digesting better, we're digesting everything out here a lot better too. So,
I
so
mean,
you.
to extract from that, but this theme for you of being grounded and rooted maybe helped you to step up in the way that you did with such presence of mind and being. Um, and and as you talk about that, you don't have recipes, but you know what you need. In essence, that's kind of Gevurah. It's like a musician that knows the notes he needs,
Mm,
and then he can just go in there and riff and play his jazz and do whatever he wants, and it's magical. But he knows the frameworks that he needs to, connect to. And maybe that's your dance with food, and why it has that balance of being, you know, organic and just spontaneous and reflective of where you are. But it's because you've paid attention to yourself and you know where you are and you know what the elements are that you need to nourish
yeah,
yourself.
yeah. And then
And
with the food thing too, like I spent a lot of, it's almost like giving yourself, like if the recipes and cooking and the food thing for you still feels hard or like it's not there, I spend a lot of time just reading cookbooks. Like not
mm,
even doing the recipes, but just like understanding where did this come from? What are the stories? What are the combinations? What goes well together? Because then I have it in my head. And I do like to give the tip too. A lot of the reasons I don't use recipes because I made things multiple times. So one of
yeah,
the tips that I give in my book is to make one recipe like 3 times over a month, because by the third time you've got it. And then what's so nice and freeing is you don't have to think about it when you go to cook. You're like, oh, and you just naturally start to keep those ingredients around.
yeah,
So letting that be, you know, easier for you and maybe a little bit more fun. I know the dishes aren't that fun, but
but
that could be a mindful moment too.
totally, totally. And the idea of prepping your meals, which you talk about sometimes, like that's even a structure and a discipline that allows you then to fly through your week. And it gives you freedom through the week because you've got that advanced
Yeah.
preparation.
Yeah.
Prepare.
Like I know where I can play and where I can look at my schedule, look at my week and say, okay, well, let's see what unfolds. And I know what those anchors are, the consistent things that I need.
Yeah,
Or like for example, if I've got really beautiful greens or something like that, if I don't have them prepped in my fridge, they're by the end of the week they're going to be yellow or
yeah,
going at that point. So it's taking almost like an inventory, like an intelligent inventory of like, okay, what are the things that I do need to structure my week? Like for me, I do need to schedule my workouts. Like I need to know, okay, Wednesday I'm doing this at this time. Of course, if I wake up feeling that day and it's really not happening, that's okay too. That's where that intuitive connection comes in to help you
yeah,
be your own gateway to where you need to go. But but we've likely heard this before, like, okay, what are the things you need in your week to feel your best? But the layer that I hope to add on top of that conversation is yes, but is it coming from this like supportive, loving, grounded place? Right?
all
Are
because
you,
yeah,
what's that? Or you need, right, exactly. So like checking in with yourself, like what is my intention here? Is it up here? Is it a should? Is it lifting my shoulders? Or is it feeling calm and feeling like, okay, I've got this? Because the more that we can tune into those moments for ourselves in planning our weeks, planning our structure, planning the things we need, um, when shit hits the fan with our kids or our partners or friendships, whatever it is, or in the news or in the world, you can handle it better because you've got so much of it there to support you already from a loving place. And so
yes,
when I veer off with my 5-year-old, my daughter Navy, I'm not so far gone. I've
yeah,
just taken like a few steps out. You see what I'm saying? Because I've done something that day to ground myself or nourish myself in some way.
completely. And you gave it to us in a way that's just so simple and accessible that 30 seconds of meditation that you did just then, or mindful checking in. It's so simple and it's so accessible. So, Robyn, were you always in the state of mind, in the state of knowing, or have you been through times where your discipline was ruling you in an unhealthy way, and it was over exercise or work or diet? Have you been in a different place? Because it feels so balanced and healthy right now.
Thanks. And my family would laugh too. They're like, everyone's like, Robyn, you're so calming and soothing. And I can hear my brother like totally razzing. You know, we all have these different sides of ourselves. I mean, this is why one of the reasons why I do the work I do, because it keeps bringing me back to this place. But
Yeah.
not any one of us is all one way. You know, we all have these, you know, lightness and darkness, yin and yang, day and night, like all these different sides to our personalities that can be fed or come out at certain moments. I would definitely say the area where I did struggle the most or go the furthest was with my diet. Really, you know, I've been dieting since I'm 13 years old, and really seeing like, well, my body did this and I don't look like the models anymore, and this is what I need to do instead. And just like a lifetime of misery with that. And it was very much connected to my father, who also struggled with his weight. And, you know, we found out after his passing, like he was eating 2 bagels on the way home from work from his secretary. You know, my mom's
Yeah.
like, why is he never losing weight? You know, and my dad struggled with that his whole life. And I feel like I was kind of a cohort in crime with our bodies, and like, what are we doing this week about it? Which is, it's just wild. I'm glad. I feel like we still have so much further to go, but thank goodness that the body positivity or acceptance or just where we're at, or even wanting to change your physical body, absolutely okay, but coming to it from a grounded place, from
Yeah.
a supportive place. Like, I want to feel my best. What do I need? As opposed to it matching a number on a scale or a pant size or looking a certain way. So thank goodness that conversations changed. But you know, 20 something years ago, it wasn't. It was either Atkins or, you know, and so I just had tried every single diet. And then of course, starting in the wellness world, part of why I went to nutrition school, because I thought it would be the thing that fixed me.
Yeah. Wow.
And I'm very honest about that. I'm like, oh, they're going to teach me to eat kale and quinoa, and then I'm finally going to be skinny.
And
And it's like, you know, I learned, it took me many, many years. This is something I still check in on regularly. Am I lifting my shirt? Not right now, but am I lifting my shirt in the morning when I look in the mirror to see if my belly's flat?
yeah.
Am I overeating in meals? Am I present during my meals? So really just a lifetime of diet and just struggling with that. And then now, coming at it from a much more loving place. And of course, I have my moments. But really, I know that this is, I'm always very wary of people, anybody in the wellness or diet space that says, when you do this, you will be this, you'll be fixed. Because to me, this is for the rest of my life. And part of that mindset shift, kind of into the theme that we're coming in, like I view that as a gift. Oh, for the rest of my life, I get to tune in with myself and check, am I taking care of myself? Am I feeding myself with love? Is it coming from a supportive place? Um, you know, some weeks are better than others. You know, am I eating these French fries not with love? Like, that feels a little far out there, but
Right.
am I present? Am I in my body?
Yeah.
Does this feel like it's part of my life? And I get to do that forever, so that I can keep that checking in with self.
Unbelievable. You've completely shifted the perspective around it, and it becomes then a gift that you can pass on to your children and will shape the way they view themselves and the world and their relationship with food and their bodies. And it's just so beautiful. And speaking about those children, how do you engage with structure and discipline as a mom, Navy? How do you set boundaries with Navy, and how do you even pass on that wisdom to her? How do you commit to not only the negative, well, I shouldn't say negative, but not only the disciplinary, structures, but how do you structure in this gift of wisdom?
I don't know. Do you have the answer to this question, Miguel?
We're all works in progress.
I'm like, what do you tell me what you do? I mean, I have no idea, you know. I say, like, I think I texted you, you know, my daughter picks some, it's okay, I say she picks wildflowers or flowers on bushes. She's flower obsessed, but she picked some planted bulbs at school and she looked at me and I was like, please don't pick that. That's not for us to pick. It's for everyone to enjoy. Picked it one day. And then the next day, my husband tells me, you know, she picked a flower again this morning when I told her not to.
Yeah.
So like kids are kids. I have to remember at the end of the day, even as intelligent and beautifully spoken as they are and brilliant about the world, they're still 5-year-olds who push boundaries and you know what I'm saying? And so I think with her with discipline, I would say she knows that there's certain expectations that she needs to meet every day. And one thing I will say that I've spent a lot of extra time with her is explaining why. This isn't for every kid. Navy is a very cerebral, you know your child. My child is extremely cerebral. So if I explain to her why, the connection to something, she's much more likely to do it. So she clears her plate at the end of the meal. I've explained to her why you're clearing your plate. Well, we're all sharing the work here. That helps us to wash the dishes so we have a clean plate. You like to have a clean plate tomorrow? This is what we all do. This is how we all work as a family, as a community, and really explain that to her, which can be exhausting. And I understand a lot of parents don't have time or energy left for that at the end of the day. Maybe like games or systems work better for your child, you know? But I think for her, she knows that there's a handful of things that are expected of her every day. She knows why they're expected of her. And then other than that, like, what can I do? You know what I mean? Just sit back and love her. One thing I do say I try and flip a lot is if I notice if she's not listening or we're battling more, I try and take a step back and say, does she need more love here? Or does she need more freedom to play from her direction? Have I been asking too much or directing too much? Is it like, well, one day a week, like, where do you want to go today after school? You know, has she had enough of that, like, really like, oh, yay, mommy's really here. So that's something I've noticed if there's a couple days in a row that feel harder or more of a struggle than others, instead of doubling down on the discipline, do I need to double down in like the letting go and almost like the love? And obviously all of this is said within reason and within safety for a child where, you know, and clear boundaries. So,
but that's sort of coming back to the idea of Gevurah, this idea of having the correct balance of it, and seeing when it's just, even though for us it might be a regular amount of structure, for a child getting back into that sensibility, and is that structure overwhelming for them? Is that too, or for them they need to be in a different state? So thank you for bringing us back to that idea.
And I mean, I'm just trying to do my best here with my, you know what I mean? It's always like
someone with like grown children for parenting advice, but I thought it's just interesting while we're in this place to like that idea. But I know you can speak for yourself, and over the past year, you've said no. I know from our conversations and our friendship, you've said no to a lot of things that you had previously said yes to, and it created a lot of space for you. And can you just tell us a little bit about that journey? Was it scary to pull back and say no? And I asked this in the framework of Gevurah being boundary setting to yourself, and just knowing when you need to shelter and put up extra periphery in order to create space to grow something physically. Now you're growing something new, but also creatively and emotionally.
Yeah, so I feel like when I got into the wellness world, I spent a good like 10, 11 years like doing everything. And that was perfectly right for me in every single one of those years. But it was a lot of drive, a lot of the next thing. And I had a lot of financial, personal, emotional success in that. So one main thing that comes to mind is I was running a very high level coaching program for about 50 something women where I would teach every single week. We would have a retreat. I did that for 3 years and I loved it. It was my like everything. And I just had this message one day where I was like, it's time to put the container down, or like it's time to like release the hold that you've had on this space, because I didn't know what was supposed to fill it, but I knew that there was supposed to be something else. I knew baby was part of it, but I knew I needed a moment to not know. And so I really did unravel a lot of a very successful business, to pare back as much as possible and to see what was it that I wanted to put back in. Could I have just more space for myself? I remember saying to my friend at some point, like, oh, I just want to make cooking videos with Navy and lead meditations. And I said this before the pandemic. And I didn't realize that I was like setting an intention or manifesting, if we like to use that word. But that's exactly what I created. You know, that's exactly what happened. And I'm not doing that as much anymore. Well, I guess I am actually. This past week, Navy's like, can we do the Mommy Navy cooking show again? And I am leading a small meditation group right now. But it's interesting the things that we put out there. And I think the piece in that is, you know, first of all, I had enough financial success in my business to be able to do that. I know that that is not possible for everyone, and that is okay, right? Sometimes we do need to keep programs going or say yes to something because it supports us in other ways. And if we can, you know, breathe into that and be at peace with that, that's okay too. I just was at this point in my career where I could take a moment to step back, even though it was super scary. And it's interesting that I created all the space and then the pandemic hit. So the gifts of that were that I didn't have the pressure of as many people on my team. I didn't have the pressure of holding so many women through this time in a kind of like a high level commitment way that I had been before. It was just all very interesting what organically and intuitively came to me that matched up with what was going on in the world and then what happened in my personal world as well. And so, you know, my messaging in that is really like, what's there for you? What's the next small thing or next big thing? And
Yeah.
often I've been hearing that for a long time, but I didn't know what it was supposed to look like. So we
Mm.
often think that our intuitive hits or our manifestations or our insights are supposed to be like, have a big banner on them and be large and sparkly. And often they're just a little question or a little right something, which is why I love to give the advice of constantly checking with your intuition every day, even if it's just those 30 seconds of deep breathing or asking yourself, what do I really need right now? Or what would be most supportive? Because when you start to get those clues that do lead up to something potentially bigger, you can listen to them more easily. Your body and your spirit trust you more, so you'll get more of it.
Mm.
Um, and so, yeah, it was just a year prior to this year of really saying no and now seeing where I'm at now. I also, it was interesting to me, like I wanted to feel shaky for a little bit. I wanted to
Right.
be like, well, what is my business? And I'm
Right.
still figuring that out.
Yeah.
You know, what is this next version of me? I've now hired again. So I brought on the strategy team and a new online business management team. And I'm being very strategic about what I'm placing back in. But I think as soon as I get like, oh, this is great, I'm comfortable, I feel like a leader, I feel like this, it's like, I like to just sort of shake it all up again and see. Because I feel like that's what challenges me in my life. And again, when it's intuitively guided, then I can trust that, all right, for whatever reason, here's where we're at.
Right. It's interesting that we all need that season to decompose. We need that season to be empty soil before something comes up. And as you said, your intuitive spark is often just a little bud, and you notice it and you notice it and
I
it
love
grows,
that.
grows. And we don't always need to, like, jump on that intuitive spark straight away and make something happen, that we can allow it to emerge. And that daily check-in that you describe just gives it space to grow and present itself. And then you took action from a very courageous place. It was
Mhm.
dismantling established structures in your lives, in your life and in your family's life, to create a new reality for all of you and to create new boundaries. And I think
Yeah.
it's a beautiful example for all of us, because it doesn't have to just be in your workspace. It's creating boundaries emotionally. It's learning to say no when a relationship is becoming too intense. And that idea, even of pushing back, um, when patterns are very ingrained and very established, can be incredibly overwhelming and incredibly scary to hold
Yeah.
new ground.
Yeah. And often it's something you can really do within yourself. We tend to think like, I remember I had a friendship where it was becoming too intense. It was not supporting me or serving me, and I didn't really love it. But then I had this moment where I was like, well, do I want this person in my life still? I was like, yes, I do want this person in my life still. So
Mm,
is there somewhere in the middle? Like, I always like want to like lean people out of the drama. This is coming from someone who's the most dramatic child, like forever. Like I think about stories about myself, I like can barely stand myself. And now I'm like, what would make this not almost not interesting? It's like, oh, well, I'll just pull back a little bit. Like I want her in my life. I almost visualized like kind of like arm's length. I would check in with her just a little bit less. And now we have this beautiful friendship that is
yeah.
right for her and right for me. And it didn't need to be this tied up thing. And I feel like a lot of like if you open like a fashion magazine and be like, get that person out of your life. But typically this discipline and these boundaries and saying yes or no, or it's all gray. It's a
Yeah.
scale and it's very rarely a 0 or a 10, you
Mm,
know?
totally. Totally. And then, yeah, if we think it again as this is your container, what riverbanks are you what are you establishing? How do they maybe need to move? And how does your container need to stretch or contract to suit your needs in that moment to be the healthiest version of you and to nourish your family and the people that you care about. And it's really interesting to think about it in that visual image. So I mean, we're already over the half an hour, but there was so much to dive into with you. And I want to be respectful and mindful of your time and everyone else's time. But Robyn, thank you so, so much for joining us. I feel like I've learned so much in this conversation about you and what I had imagined to be your relationship with Gevurah. And you even just blew my mind even more because I think this idea of finding our groundedness and our inner love, our inner chesed, and allowing that to
Mm.
inform the Gevurah that we consciously create is just so powerful. And you made it so accessible with the examples that you gave. And so I just, would like to bless all of us that we learn how to set boundaries with the same compassion that you're displaying to us today, and how we can show up to our practices, whatever they be, and then let them go when we need to let them go without being too hard on ourselves, and that we find the structure that we need to enhance our lives and to show up in the world as the best, version of ourselves that we can be in each moment. And may that ripple out, beyond us to our families, communities, society at large. And thank you so, so much for being here.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I love you. I love this chat. And like I said, it's really what a beautiful series that you've created here. And I'm always grateful anytime ever anyone can kind of pull me into my Jewish heart and soul and spirit and use that as a jumping off point for modern day spirituality, life, all of the
Right.
things. It's funny. I remember when I was like reading all the metaphysical texts, I think like 10 years ago, and I started to really dive into this world. He's like, that's all in Judaism too, right?
Yeah, I know. Bingo.
I was
No,
like, oh, because I was just thinking like, Judaism is like sitting in temple and like reading through the same prayers. And so what a beautiful opportunity that you've given all of us to explore the uniquely spiritual side of Judaism and the anchors of centuries of wisdom and stories and healing that live within our people and that we can share with everyone, with the world.
yeah,
So thank you.
better. You couldn't have said it better. May this live up to that. So
Yeah.
anyway, have a beautiful, beautiful day where
Thank
you are.
you.
And
You
everyone
too.
who is here, thank you so much for
Thank
joining
you for
us.
being here.
And we'll speak to you soon.
Okay. Bye,
Well,
Betty. Bye.
bye.